Okay, and that was the D major scale, which is one of the first things they learned. Scales are so important. All music consists of scales, and so that's how we start. And now we're going to go ahead and start with our first tune, Dartmoor's Legend. The piece we just played was called Majestic March, and our last tune for beginning orchestra is going to take us back to the Middle Ages. This is Medieval King. Yeah, what a sound, huh? Good job, guys. That first tune was called Subatomic by Larry Clark, who is a composer who lives up in Lakeland, writes a lot of good music for beginning bands. Our next tune is going to be Ceremonial Procession, and this is going to kind of take a step back a little bit, and this is more of like a regal coronation or some sort of event like that. So we hope you enjoy Ceremonial Procession. Move Me by Megan Trainor. Yeah, what a sound, huh? Good job, guys. That first tune was called Subatomic by Larry Clark, who is a composer who lives up in Lakeland, writes a lot of good music for beginning bands. Our next tune is going to be Ceremonial Procession, and this is going to kind of take a step back a little bit, and this is more of like a regal coronation or some sort of event like that. So we hope you enjoy Ceremonial Procession. Our next tune is Lips Are Moving by Megan Trainor. And they played so well, and they have played well all year, and I pushed them a lot, and a number of these students are 8th graders are going to high school, and you know, my goal at the beginning of the year was to basically get them ready to play in a high school orchestra, and I feel like we've done a really good job, and they've improved so much since the beginning of the year. And we're going to go ahead and start off with a tune called Appalachian Hymn, which is based on a folk song from Appalachia, North Carolina, Tennessee area. And it's been crafted here for beginning band, orchestra. Okay, our next song is called Sahara Crossing, and this piece is an opportunity for the students to explore a different kind of harmony. We call it melodic minor harmony, and this is something you would hear in Middle Eastern music, but here it's set for Western string instruments. So we hope you enjoy Sahara Crossing. We have one more little setup to do. We have a couple instruments being shared, so while we do that, I'll go ahead and stop to present a couple of Directors Awards. I would like to recognize 3 individuals with the Directors Award for Outstanding Musician. These individuals will come from the advanced groups. And they demonstrated dedication throughout the year, not only to their craft as musicians, but to their peers and to their ensembles. They were focused, diligent, and responsible, and they led others by example. So at this time, if I can have these 3 individuals come up, I'm going to present you with a plaque. And the first student has been the glue that holds the percussion together, and that's Mr. Kane Smith. Come on up. And the next student from our advanced orchestra, every day, advanced orchestra has 7 periods. They have the last class today. Every day as soon as the bell rang, she would sit there and practice until the bus dismissal was called. Every single day. And she was totally committed to getting better at the cello. And I can't wait to go and see her perform at Lehigh Senior High. Jennifer Fuentes. And one more, this young man is very talented at playing a brass instrument. I knew from pretty much the first couple of hours that I listened to him play that he has a natural ability. And not only that, he's always like Mr. Cool. While others are goofing around, he's always just sitting back there, super focused, ready to go. He reminds me of like a high school senior, to be honest with you. And we can't wait for him to lead our trombone section next year, Mr. Aiden Gabriel. And I thought he would be a basketball player, but he says he doesn't like basketball. We're glad he likes band. Okay, so we're going to start off with Pirates of the Caribbean. next tune is a really interesting piece of music. It's kind of got the sound of a Hollywood film score, so it's going to take us into the far reaches of space, and it's called Nebula. Before we do our last tune for the evening, just want to extend a special thanks to a few people here on campus that help make what you see possible. And first and foremost, our admin team, Mr. Peters and Mr. Carter over here. For one, thank you. And Mr. Dangler, who is our arts department head. Thank you. Anytime there's an event, he's right there ready to do sound and video, and that's awesome. I'd also like to thank all of you as parents, because without your continued support, we wouldn't have music like this in the community. So I really appreciate you. I know it's demanding to get all this stuff together, but I think you can see like the product at the end is worth it. And I really appreciate you guys for supporting me and putting up with me and all the bad sounds at the beginning of the year and all that stuff. So, our last tune is going to be Blackthorn March, and this will close everything out. Thank you for coming, and we can't wait to see you guys next year. For those of you who are going to high school, we'll miss you, and I'll come to your band concerts, I promise, at the other schools, all right?
recognition to everyone, and now we want to give recognition to you. The past 2 years have simply been amazing, and thank you for what you do for our students. All right, parents, are you ready? Do you have some tissue? Well, get the cameras out. Come on up. All right, parents, I'm giving you a photo right now. You guys spread out, guys. Parents, if you want a photo op.
Red line, guys, red line.
This is going to be our 8th grade students' final performance here at VPAA. And Mr. L, I can definitely tell you they are ready for high school. Thank you. Thank you, 8th grade.